In the heart of Gaza City, a makeshift memorial stands as a silent, powerful testament to an unbearable loss. Rows of blue press vests, the kind worn by journalists in conflict zones, are laid out carefully on the ground. Beside them, helmets and cameras, the tools of their trade, are arranged in a somber tribute. Each vest represents a life cut short, a voice silenced, a storyteller who will no longer bear witness for the rest of us. These are not just artifacts. They are the ghosts of Gaza's last journalists. The brave men and women who stayed behind to document a war that has consumed their homeland. Their mission was to show the world the unvarnished truth. And they paid the ultimate price for that commitment, leaving a void that may never be filled. This is a story about the profound cost of truth in a time of war. It is about the deliberate and devastating silencing of the very people we rely on to understand the human toll of conflict. The conflict that erupted after the horrific attacks of October 7, 2023, plunged Gaza into an abyss of violence and suffering. As Israel's military campaign intensified, access for international media became nearly impossible, creating an information vacuum. In this void, the role of Palestinian journalists transformed from important to absolutely essential. They became the primary and often only source of verifiable information coming out of the besieged strip. They were our window into the collapsing hospitals, the overcrowded shelters, and the streets filled with the ghosts of a vibrant society. Their reports were not just news. They were lifelines of information for families inside Gaza and for a world desperate to understand the human consequences of the war. These journalists were not parachuted into a foreign land. They were documenting the destruction of their own world. They knew the streets, the people, and the culture intimately. On a cold day in front of Al-Shifa Hospital, a place that was supposed to be a sanctuary, the war on truth took a brutally specific form. Journalists had set up a tent, a designated media space, from which they could file their reports and recharge their equipment. It was a hub of activity, a small pocket of professional perseverance. This tent was not a secret. It was clearly marked, a known location for the press corps. Yet it became the target of a precise and deadly Israeli drone strike. The attack was swift and devastating, turning a space of reportage into a scene of carnage and extinguishing several vital voices in an instant. Among the dead were Mustafa Thuraya, a freelance videographer who contributed to Agence France Presse, and Hamza al-Dadou, a journalist and cameraman for Al Jazeera. Also killed in the attack was Ali Salem Abu Ajwa. In the aftermath, the Israeli military made disputed claims, suggesting the journalists were militants. These claims remain unverified and have been vehemently disputed by their families, colleagues, and news organizations. Hamza al-Dadou was not just a journalist. He was the son of Wael al-Dadou, Al Jazeera's Gaza bureau chief, a man who has become a global symbol of journalistic resilience. The world had already watched Wael grieve the loss of his wife, another son, a daughter, and a grandson in a previous Israeli strike. Hamza was following in his father's footsteps, driven by the same passion for telling Gaza's story. Friends described him as gentle, brave, and deeply committed to his work, always eager to capture the human element of the conflict. His death was a devastating personal blow to a family that had already sacrificed so much. Mustafa Thuraya was a freelance videographer whose powerful images reached global audiences through major news agencies like AFP. He was known for his courage and his artistic eye, often venturing into the most dangerous areas to capture footage that no one else could. Ali Salem Abu Ajwa was another respected journalist killed in the strike, a professional who had dedicated his career to covering Gaza. He was known for his calm demeanor and his meticulous reporting, a trusted voice in a chaotic environment. These were not faceless casualties of war. They were sons, brothers, friends, and colleagues. They were young men with dreams and aspirations that extended far beyond the confines of the conflict they were forced to cover. The targeted killing of journalists in Gaza has not gone unnoticed by the international community. A powerful and unified chorus of condemnation has risen from press freedom organizations, human rights groups, and world leaders. Organizations like the Committee to Protect Journalists and Reporters Without Borders have been relentless in their advocacy, meticulously documenting each death and demanding independent investigations. United Nations officials, including the Secretary General, have repeatedly expressed their alarm and called for all parties to protect journalists as civilians under international humanitarian law. The world's leading news organizations have also joined forces to demand action. In a rare display of unity, dozens of media outlets from across the globe have signed open letters calling for the protection of their colleagues in Gaza. Despite this widespread condemnation, however, accountability remains elusive. The calls for independent investigations have largely gone unheeded, and the cycle of violence against journalists has continued with impunity. This failure to act sends a dangerous message to autocratic regimes and armies around the world, that they can silence dissenting voices and control the narrative by eliminating the messenger. The journalists of Gaza did not set out to be martyrs. They were professionals, storytellers, and truth seekers who wanted to live, to love, and to practice their craft in peace. Their courage was not born from a desire for glory, but from a deep-seated conviction that their work mattered. Their legacy is etched in the powerful images they captured, the moving stories they told, and the indelible record they left behind for history. To honor them is to refuse to let their work die with them. We, as a global community, have a profound responsibility to carry their torch forward. This begins with demanding justice. We must amplify the calls from press freedom organizations for full, transparent, and independent investigations. Supporting press freedom is not a passive act. It requires our active engagement. We must seek out and support the work of local journalists in conflict zones everywhere. We must subscribe to and donate to news organizations that prioritize on-the-ground independent reporting. We must challenge misinformation and refuse to accept narratives that dehumanize and obscure the truth. In a world saturated with propaganda, credible journalism is our most potent antidote. In the end, the story of Gaza's journalists is a universal one. They were the last voices in a place that the world tried to forget, and their final dispatches were a plea for us to see, to listen, and to care. Let us not fail them. Their work has ended, but their call to witness has just begun.